Welcome back to Webcertain TV. I'm Gemma Houghton. Today I'm here with Nick Pedersen, who is the Managing Director for EQ Global, a cross-border payments platform, and we're going to be discussing cross-border e-commerce and payments. So, hi Nick, thanks for being here.
Pleasure. So,
we're seeing that, cross-border e-commerce in general is increasing quite dramatically. When it comes to the travel industry in particular, are there any trends there and any specific developments that are worth noting?
Yeah, I think, cross-border payments in the travel sector is huge. If you think about how often we book now these days on booking.com on our phone, it's incredibly easy for a travel operator to access customers in foreign markets, particularly if you look at Brexit. So what happened with Brexit, when the value of the pound depreciated, it all of a sudden made UK travel operators holidays in the UK an awful lot cheaper for customers to come to. And I think not all of them were that prepared for that sort of influx of foreign customers. So what we do is we try and help them understand those risks. And the big one for me is that the digitisation and the ease with which you can reach customers in foreign markets. It's no different really selling to a customer in the States as it is to Asia these days.
And what are the biggest opportunities then for travel brands to kind of harness that and take advantage of it?
Yeah, so the opportunities are huge in terms of expanding your portfolio of different products. Particularly around Brexit, as I said, with that drop of the value of the pound, foreign currency markets then can all of a sudden make certain holidays become incredibly attractive. And that will keep changing. So one year, for example, it's great to come to the UK. The next year will be great to go to China or great to go to South Africa. And I think that's a big impact, which some travel companies don't necessarily appreciate, because all of a sudden they see a huge influx of certain tourists to a certain particular product, and the actual currency market behind it can have a big impact.
Yeah, so it's kind of very important to be aware of how that's changing and developing, and kind of try and spot trends, I guess, ahead of time when you can. Spotting
trends and also adapting your pricing as well, because if you're aware of what's happening in the currency markets, you can change your pricing to maximise the profits you have as well. You don't necessarily need to use the most relevant rate, because all of a sudden your revenues have doubled. You can probably make a bit more margin on that.
And what are the biggest risks or pitfalls, equally, with opportunity is always the flip side? What are the things you need to be wary of when you're kind of handling these transactions?
Yeah, so the big thing I think is to, first of all, if you're going to sell overseas or to foreign customers, you've got to price in their local currency. Yeah. You need to show them the price that they want to see, because if you think about yourself, buying from a website or buying from a travel operator in a foreign currency puts you off a little bit. We did a survey, and sort of 35% of customers would leave a website if they didn't see the price in their local currency. So that's an opportunity, but also a risk, because when you start pricing in foreign currency, then all of a sudden you're going to start to receive foreign currency. And what you do with that can be a little bit daunting sometimes. If you hold on to euro sales for 6-9 months, all of a sudden if the value of the euro flips, you may have wiped out some of the revenue you thought you were going to make on it. So great opportunity, but a big potential risk if you're not aware of how to manage that.
And that is the biggest, probably, or big problem, because it's just something that many businesses don't really think about. You sell in a certain amount, you kind of think, well, that sale's been made, but what you actually do with that currency and the difference that even just a slight change in the exchange rates can bring is quite a huge amount in terms of revenue.
Exactly. I mean, travel companies' margins are 5, 10, 15%. It's not a huge high margin business like drilling for oil. So a swing of a currency in 20%, all of a sudden your profit margin has just disappeared. And then invariably what we see is that tends to come on the agenda once it's happened retrospectively, that all of a sudden somebody said, oh, last year I made a loss of 100 grand, and the CEO and CFO are saying, well, why did that happen? Can we please understand it? So we try and help companies be a bit more proactive with their thoughts to currency risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, anything to do with payments and currency and finance is regulated quite heavily. Can you explain what PSD2 is and why that's important and why it's something that brands need to be aware of?
Yeah, sure, I'll try. I mean, it's a lot of complex regulation, but for travel companies or online sellers to bear in mind with PSD2, big thing is it enables ourselves as non-bank providers, or even yourselves as a travel company, to pull funds directly from a customer's account. So when we talk to customers about it, it's something to bear in mind in terms of the checkout process. Okay. I think it would challenge traditional payment methods of credit cards. A lot of travel companies struggle with credit cards with the fraud associated with it. If you're able to use a provider to pull funds directly from a customer's bank account, potentially that goes away. It makes the friction a lot less for a customer. You check out, you've paid, rather than having to enter in all your credit card details. But the big thing to bear in mind is, with changing business models, travel companies historically have never been regulated by financial service authorities, the more they stray into payments, the more likely that might become. Mm-hmm. So whilst great opportunities with PSD2 to use some of these new products and services, the closer you get to becoming a payments provider, the more likely you are to be regulated.
And the more responsibility you have to take for how you handle that.
Absolutely. And then all of a sudden you might wake up with realising, okay, I need to do all these different things because I now need to be regulated by the FCA. Airbnb, as an example, is in many countries now registering themselves as a money service business or a payment service provider. So just something to bear in mind for a fast-growing travel company. As you say, the more you use these regulations, the more likely you might have some responsibility associated with it as well.
And PSD2, is that something that's UK only, or is that worldwide? Or?
No, it's across the EU. It's the EU. So, and actually Brexit doesn't make any difference for it. It's already enshrined in UK law. Okay. It comes into force 13th of January next year. A lot of banks, a lot of non-bank providers are sort of grappling with what products to build on the back of it. For consumers, for travel companies, for suppliers, it's only, in my view, only a good thing, because it opens up banking infrastructure to lots of different parties.
Yeah, it makes it, like you say, better for customers overall, much easier process.
Absolutely, it'll make it better for customers, it'll make it cheaper for customers, it makes it harder for companies like ourselves and banks because we have to adapt to the regulation, but there's a lot of opportunity to make products for consumers a lot better and a lot frictionless, a lot less friction involved in a payment process. Because when you book a holiday, the last thing you want to be doing is messing around with having to pay for it. It needs to be seamless. Like if you step out of the car of Uber, it's just done, right?
Yeah. You don't think about it.
You don't think about it. It just happens, and that's kind of what PSD2 is trying to bring in terms of financial services more generally.
And of course, it's the kind of advancement in technology that's making all of this possible, the fact that there are different ways to very easily take these payments. What kind of technologies are out there? What are the kind of standards that businesses would be looking to or using in order to make this possible for their business?
Yeah, I think for travel companies and businesses selling online, there's sort of two key things which for next year are worth thinking about. There's a big rise in our sector of virtual bank accounts. Mm-hmm. So rather than having to physically open currency accounts with a bank in Spain, for example, if you have a business out there, that's not going to be something that takes 24 hours normally. Yeah. It takes weeks, takes months.
Yeah,
not the easiest thing to do. Most travel companies, when they say it's a big headache, open a bank account. So virtual bank accounts are becoming really, really popular, issuing unique IBANs, unique sort codes in a customer's actual name that you can turn around in sort of 12, 24 hours. And then the use of APIs and directly integrating from a customer booking to triggering a payment to sending that out to a supplier, rather than having to have a team of 5-10 operations people manually checking a payment's come in, then keying in the payment and then sending it out to a bank. The use of APIs in the travel sector on the front end is huge, and that's starting to make its way towards the back end to the more traditional operations stuff like payment processing.
If you're actually looking to implement some of this technology and find a system or a platform that would work for your business and brand, what are some of the big questions to ask or things to take into account when finding the right fit?
Yeah, so I think a reputation with a provider that they are actually a technology company and have a strong technology background. Yeah. Again, with an API, whilst a lot of people say an API is kind of standard, there are lots of different types of APIs. Some technologists look at API specifications and think it's very hard to code to. So bear in mind it does take some investment and development. If you want to automate your payment processing, it's not something you can just buy off the shelf. You need to spend a bit of time on it, and you want to be doing that with a provider that has a good reputation in getting these things done. It's always going to be the case that you need to spend a 6-week period, 12-week period, probably put a bit of cash onto it on your side as well. But in the long run, the benefits pay off, provided the counterparty you're looking at has a strong reputation as being a good technology provider.
Yeah, so do your research and make sure you understand what they can offer and how.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely compare products in the market. I would always advise people to look at different providers. Some have strength in certain areas, some have strengths in others. If you are really keen on making things automated and slick, it would be making sure that the provider has a really good technology background. Yeah.
And what would be your kind of top tip or a couple of tips for travel brands that are selling internationally? What are the really important things they should be thinking about and bearing in mind both now and looking forward?
Yeah, so we touched on it earlier. I mean, I think pricing in local currency is so important, and onto that as well, actually having a local language website too.
Yeah.
The checkout abandonment is huge, and still you'd be surprised how few travel companies, when they're not at scale, think that, okay, I'll just sell in pounds to my UK customer, and nobody from outside the UK is going to visit. Of course they're going to visit, and we sort of suggest as a general rule, once you have 5% of your sales coming from outside of the UK or outside of whatever currency you're pricing in, start to price in that local currency, start to consider a local language website. And then the second one would be automation. It's amazing how quickly in the digital world we live in, a business can go from £10,000 of revenue to £10 million of revenue. And if you don't automate your processes, you're going to be playing catch up. Look at the examples of Airbnb and Uber. It's incredible how much they automate stuff. And you have to adopt those similar models, otherwise you'll explode and you get left behind, and then you have to play catch up.
Yeah, great. So lots of opportunity anyway.
Absolutely.
And really appreciate you sharing that today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.